Thanks, Rene, and thanks everybody else who was here on stage. Thanks for Ismo and Tato for contribution. And thanks, Manny, for the guides. I think that's really awesome. I hope you go check it out. And it's definitely something that will grow bigger when we go further. This year is kind of an anniversary in a sense that this is, first of all, this is 6th RoboCon, but it means that it's 5 years when the first one was run in 2018. So that's awesome. Another kind of anniversary we have is that it's going to be 15 years for Robot Framework being open sourced. So that happened in 2008. In summertime, I think it was June or something. I don't remember the exact date, but yeah, around that time. As you may know, the original concept was based on my master's thesis that I was working with earlier, 2004, 2005. Then it was developed a few years at Nokia Networks. And then Petri Haapio, who got me there to work at Nokia Networks, also fought with their lawyers, and I don't know how, but he was able to get permission from them that the code that we had developed for them, we were able to open source it, and then that happened in 2008. And well, now here we are. I'm not going to go too much more details with the history. I did actually talk about that in the first RoboCon. I guess it's somehow online, so if you are interested, and you can go check it. There's examples from the really early versions and so on. Now, right here, I would say that although we have awesome history, and it's really, really good to have it, it's more important the Robot Framework is very much live thanks to the foundation and the whole ecosystem and community and so on. It's very much live, and we have had great releases. This is something that I was talking already last May when I was here on stage, so that we had a very big release in March last year. Robot Framework 5 adding a lot of control structures, try excepts, while loops. Also enhancing the library API with custom argument converters and much more. So that was a really big release back then. But also last year we had actually another big release called 6.0. That was released in October, and the key thing there was translation. This, of course, is not translate. That's example in English, and that's something you should all kind of understand, I guess. But with Robot Framework 6 and newer, you can also run this, and it will be the same. Of course, the message that you get logged to console is going to be different, but it's kind of we can translate headers, we can translate those settings, not only to Finnish, but also to German, thanks to Rene who gave me this example. So these kind of translations are possible. As you can see, we can translate headers, we can translate settings, like there's the documentation there. We cannot yet translate keyword names, like library keywords, like log to console there. That's not German, I guess. At least it's not Finnish, like it was here. So that's something I understand. So that might be something to happen in the future, that we make it possible that those could also be translated. And then, of course, error messages and log files and reports. So there's a lot of things that we can still do to make translation and localization better. But already now that you can write those headers and settings in many different languages is awesome. You have, of course, already earlier been able to write your test case names and your own these keyword names in whatever language you want. So that has never been a problem. But now it's kind of more native. So it's obviously not only Finnish and German that we are supporting. We are supporting actually quite a few languages. So I actually don't. That's many. So and all these languages, all these translations were provided by our awesome community while we were developing 6.0. If your language is not there, now we are actively developing 6.1, so you have a very good chance to go and translate them. It's not that big task. There aren't that many headers and settings at the moment, so we're definitely accepting more translation. And for those people who have been working with this translation earlier, we are very thankful. Especially thankful for Elout, who was leading the effort, but also for everyone else who was kind of providing translation for various languages. So awesome stuff. Yeah, that was definitely the biggest thing in 6.0. There were many other features as well. You can find release notes online, but there was nothing compared to this one. But yeah, so that's also something that's been released already. But there's also, of course, thinking about the future, what's going to be next. And the next release is going to be 6.1. It's going to be released in March this year. Well, that's at least a target. You never know. Hopefully, latest in April. the key thing there's also many features there, but one of the key feature there is going to be JSON serialization. And with JSON serialization, what it means is that we can convert executable robot framework test suite into JSON. And the main purpose for that is sending that to other machines or somehow kind of distribution of test cases. It doesn't, the example here is from the first kind of example that we had there, the Finnish, English one earlier. So this is how it looks like when it's being serialized to JSON. But you can, this also works with directory structure. So you can have a big like directory that you can serialize to JSON. So that instead of, if you want to send test cases over to some other machine to be executed, you don't need to send a directory structure. You can basically save it to JSON and send that. And Mani has been mentioned already multiple times. Is actually working already with the project that is kind of related to that and has Kubernetes and all kind of fun, cool tech there. And I'm kind of expecting to see a talk related to that, maybe by him or someone else at RoboCon next year. So yeah, but this is a kind of going to be the biggest features in this release. There's of course useful features for kind of normal users. This is more like tool developers, people who are interested in distribution. Maybe this also could be a really good data format for people who are developing custom editors. So if you want to like have a visual editor for robot framework or something like that, you don't then necessarily need to save it to robot framework, kind of native robot framework syntax. You can save it to JSON. I wouldn't personally like to write this manually, so it's not very good. That's not the point here. The robot framework's native syntax is much better for that, but this is good for communication and for things like that. So when you save it to JSON like this, you can recreate the suite from that again. So you can basically have a suite that, okay, I could run this, and then instead of running it, you save it to JSON, send it somewhere, and then you recreate the suite there, and then you run it on that place. So that's kind of the point. But yeah, that's I have to say now, but latest kind of big features, big enhancements, and also what's coming next. I guess we got to get then the next speaker on stage, and only after that then there's a chance for ask questions. By the way, you can ask questions after each talk. There's a Q&A, but then there's a speaker corner for kind of a more detailed discussion with speakers, so that you can just go there after each talk as well. But now I'm introducing Ed, who is going to talk about the community.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, actually, good morning. I was going to say, what time is it in the United States on the East Coast? It's probably actually about 2 o'clock in the morning right now. But it's truly a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Ed Manlove, and as I've done in a couple past years, talked about us, talked about the community. And this year, as I kind of reflected on the community, I had a few words that I really wanted to talk about. So it's kind of helped me focus. And all of these words kind of started with the letter M. So as we might say, if we were watching a children's program we have in the United States called Sesame Street, today's talk is brought to you today's talk is brought to you by the letter M. Let's look at those words. Here's the 3 words. Metrics, motivation, movement. Now, I'm actually a really big fan of REM, and they put out on their last album a song called Alligator, Aviator, Autopilot, Antimatter. Please don't ask me to sing the song. We'll do it later. But I decided to go ahead and make this 4 words. So, memory, metrics, motivation, movement. And at a risk of taking a tangent, I want to start off with memory. So if we look at some of our discussions we've had in the past years, back in 2018, we had our conference, and we were talking about the ideas of creating community. You know, what's the importance of an open source community? There are a lot of things. What community is important. This was something we talked about, that community is important. It's really what drives and builds and grows and contributes. So we are a community. We talked about having no rock stars. And that is these people that are these standalone, they come out on stage from backstage, they do their thing, they go back to backstage, and they're not part of the community. So we don't have rock stars. Instead, we have heroes, right? And that's all of us. Each and every one of us is a hero. In addition, each and one of us is needed. So we are all here as heroes. We're all here as contributors, as participants. In 2021, we were started to talk about, giving some descriptions to us as a community. That we are large, we're growing, a global community, we are a supportive community, and that we are participatory community. We have participants. We actually, a couple of us had a conversation the other night. Should we be using the word contributor or should we be using the word participant? And we actually kind of liked the word participant. There was kind of a difference there between contributors being a participant, right? And that's all of us. How many of you have gone on the Slack channel? Well, I know this was a question earlier, but how many of you are on the Slack channel? We'll go on and do that again. All right. How many of you have asked a question on the Slack channel? Repeat the number for the internet. About most of the room. All right. How many people have asked a question on the Slack channel? I'm trying to see beyond the light. So that looks about half the room. How many people have helped somebody else on the Slack channel? A little bit less than that. One of my big things here that I'm going to be talking about, right? We're talking about movement and action. One of the things we talked about last year, give and take, right? So one of the things I want to do is encourage you this year. This is really what I'm talking about, those metrics, that movement. I want to make some movement this year, right? So one of the things I'm doing is actually asking all of you, those that have come to the Slack channel, if you need something, feel free to ask a question. Just go ahead and ask. It's a wonderful place to get your support from one another, from someone who's done something similar to what you've done. The other thing I'd ask is give an answer, right? Ask a question, give an answer. So if somebody goes up on the Slack channel and has asked out a question and you have some experience, I want to be careful with that. If you've tried something, right? It might be a good experience, it might even be a bad experience. I encourage you all to go out there and give an answer. That's actually very important because that actually helps sustain us as a community. If it's only a handful of people answering questions, eventually, I've seen this in many open source projects, eventually those people get tired of answering questions, right? Even though they love to do it, it is tough to sustain that, right? And so as a community, it's important that all of us kind of participate and you grow from that. So we start to see where we've been, but before we talk about where we want to go, I want to talk about one other thing. I want to talk about metrics. So our second word, metrics. Now, metrics are interesting because whenever I talk about metrics with testers or test automation people, how many people like the term metrics? How many people dislike the term metrics? Okay, more. There's some people with no opinions. That's all right to have no opinions. I'll repeat the number of people. No one likes it. Renee tells me to say no one likes it. So, there's a problem with that. I agree. Metrics like that. But metrics are extremely important. So, Jim Collins here. Jim Collins is an expert in businesses. He is a researcher who has researched what makes businesses really work. In particular, he made this book called Good to Great, right? What makes really good companies actually great companies? And one of the factors in there that he talks about that helps those very, 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 very few companies really be truly great companies is they are able to measure what's important to them. Now, so for us to become a great community, we need to measure community. Now, I kind of would expect a question here is like, Ed, how do we measure community, right? I can measure code coverage, a term I do not like. There's a hard number, right? But how do you measure community? So interesting, Jim Collins actually got asked this very question in a slightly different way. So business guru, out in the business world, how we measure success in business, one way is by profit. He had a lot of people coming up to him from nonprofits asking, okay, you're talking about this, that the key factor to become a great company is we have to measure. But all we read in this book of yours is profit, 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 profit. Profit means absolutely nothing to us. And he took some time, thought about it, and he actually added this supplement book on the social sectors. And he said, yes, you still need to measure. It's just you need to be measuring what's important to you, right? What's core to you. Yes, you're not a business, so what's core to you? Question is then, what's core to us, right? During this conference, with this wonderful opportunity to have this face-to-face conversation, here's a question I have for you to start having discussions with, right? How do we measure our community? What is it that we measure? I threw up a couple of ideas. How many people are not only just asking a question, but answering a question? The question I just asked you, right? How many people are doing that? I would love to see an increase in number of people answering questions, right? That's important. How many of them said they've become a better tester or a better test automation person, right? This long term, right? Over time, have we made you a better tester? Have we made you a better test automator, right? Not necessarily just with Robot Framework. It's all right if it's not just with Robot Framework. Maybe it's all right if it's not with Python. But have we made you a better tester and a better test automator? All right, motivation. So we have memories of where we've been, some ideas of how to measure, because it's important to know where we're going. Now we get our motivation. Now, as I started to think about this, this is my word, right? This is what's kind of stopping me. This is my factor in sometimes getting the things I need done, sometimes not, right? Mine is motivation. So let me make this a little bit more generic. Let me take it a little wider so that it might apply to all of us. Motivation might be yours, but let's go wider. Fundamental questions, right? What is it that helps you to contribute to the community, right? What are the factors that encourage that or allow for or maybe enable you to contribute? Here, let me give you an example, right? Maybe, for example, my company gives me, say, 4 hours a week. Maybe it's a day a month, right? Maybe it's not my company does it. Maybe my family allows it, right? We kind of set aside time to contribute. So what is it that enables you to contribute? Maybe more important, right? My factor might be motivation. What's the second question here, right? What is it that's preventing you? What's causing you not to be able to contribute, right? Maybe my business doesn't matter, or my business thinks that this doesn't matter, and we can talk about that. What are some good arguments for being able to participate? One is you're working with some of the best, right? Where do we find the best of the best? You can pull them from all over, right? You're not just one small group. You can pull them from wherever. So there's arguments for this. But what's preventing you? Going back to our original example, the family issue, right? I know for myself, and I know for many people, my family time's my family time, right? And so I'm not going to spend my family time that, and that's very important. So, how do we enable you to participate more in the community. And then the last one, how do you grow, right? Professionally, or personally, or even, as I started to, I was actually sitting here thinking, this is a lot about individuals. Companies too, right? How do companies grow, right? What do you need, right? We've got a job board out here, right? Looking for, if you're looking for employees, you've got that. You've got some of the best here, That's one of the things with open source communities. You get such a wide range. So how do you grow? So that's our factor to help us move. So we've got memory, metrics, motivation, and now movement. So I say, let's go robot framework. Woo! Yeah. All right. Where do we want to go? These are some of my personal ones. I am, as noted, the current maintainer of the Selenium library, and I want to grow the team. I want to get more participations, right? I want to get more people the chance to grow, right? Become leaders in the community. So I want to grow the Selenium library team. I want to realize the greater potential for Market Square. How many people know what Market Square is? Okay. How many people know where Market Square is in the city of Helsinki? How many people have I now confused with their wondering what is Market Square? Some will think it's one thing and some think it's something else. Yes, about half the crowd. All right, let me tell you what Market Square. So there's two Market Squares. There's a Market Square here in Helsinki. It is down by the bay, and if you want a fun adventure, you can go with me. There's a fountain down there. It is a place, as I understand, that all of Finns come out when something in the world, something that happens in the Finnish world gets announced out to the world, such as the World Hockey Champions Finland of every year there has ever been because they're the greatest hockey players ever. Yay! Everybody comes out to Market Square, they celebrate and really do that. There's also a Market Square here in the Robot Framework community. It is our GitHub community site. So GitHub is a code repository where everybody can bring in their projects. Generally, we have our individual accounts on GitHub. Market Square is out on GitHub, and it is a community place. It's a place for people to bring repositories out so that they can bring them out into the open. They can share them with others easily, find it easily. It is a place that we can build teams, and it's also a place for long-term maintenance, right? So having a community library out there that's maintained over time. So Market Square, we can talk more about that. Maybe I'll pull up a thing, but that's the second one. And I want to increase the number of participants. My question for you is, as individuals, as people, or maybe as companies, what is your goals? What are the goals that you have? And as a community, what are some of our goals? What goals should we set? We have a lot of time for, kind of that open air here at the conference. I encourage you to spend some time, just as we kind of got introduced to somebody new. I encourage you to have conversations around these. Come find me, come talk to me. I make really cool business cards for the conference, and I can put on the back of them different pictures. I've got pictures from all over Helsinki. So for those who are local, I have a challenge for you to come ask me, and I'll show you the pictures, and we can guess where they're from. Those who are not in Helsinki, come talk to me. I'll tell you where these great places are, and you can go and visit them. One last one, memories. For me personally, it's the interactions, it's the individual. So I think a lot of these photos are from my trip here in Helsinki. Bottom corner, bottom right is Pekka. We had gone to the art museum one day, and we were looking at photos. I think this was one of your favorites, is this not? I think it was my favorite. I can't remember, one of our favorites. So there's opportunities to grow. So I encourage you to grow while you're here at this conference. So memory, metrics, motivation, movement. Key here. I really want to make some movement, right? I want to make some movement.